Gay rights.
Yeah.
Now
it
we're
is
all
Pride
going to do
Month after all.
poppers.
Welcome to Bible Boys, a podcast where two ex-evangelical siblings and an ex-Catholic non-sibling watch Christian media and either praise or condemn it. I'm Aaron.
I'm Josh.
And I'm Michael.
And this week, we grab our mascara and hand puppets as we watch The Eyes of Tammy Faye. Before we discover even more reasons to hate Jerry Falwell, please be sure to rate and review us on Apple Podcasts, like and comment on our video, and follow us on Twitter at The Bible Boys.
And why should you guys follow us on Twitter? That's because you might be entered in to win the first ever Bible Boys giveaway. So today I made a purchase at my local bookstore, McKay's bookstore. Michael is probably very familiar with this store. We've been there since we were little kids. They've got everything and everything. They also have the Tammy Faye record with hits such as The World Didn't Give It to Me, The Blood Will Never Lose Its Power, and Grandma Sang Off Key. So
I've never seen Michael so excited to be on this podcast.
I'm in love.
this was almost a Michael birthday present, but I am giving you guys the chance to win this beautiful piece of Bible Boys memorabilia, which will be signed by yours truly, ruining any value it had. I will leave the price sticker on there. I spent 75 cents to earn this beautiful piece of music history. I am happy to announce that there were about 14 Baker exclusive records there, and only one Tammy Faye. And that's just pretty. If you're a used bookstore, not a good sign if your stuff is there.
Because Tammy Faye is the moment. She is an icon. She's legendary. She's magical.
But for this giveaway, we're just going to pick... I'm going to ask if Michael can just put out a picture of that, like it, and we'll pick someone at random. I'm sure someone who doesn't listen to this podcast is going to win just because they are going to be like, haha, funny, and like it, and then be like, what the fuck?
We should probably clarify, Michael is going to be entered in this drawing as well, so you are competing against at least one other person.
Michael is going to make 3 or 4 burner accounts to make sure.
His sock puppets out.
Gonna
All
make
accounts.
them.
Oh, God.
Swift Lover 1843?
All right, I guess we should talk about this. Michael, it was very obviously your pick this week. What made you decide to land on the Tammy Faye buffet, I guess, to choose a bad metaphor?
So, I don't know how familiar our audience is with the fact that there's going to be a film based off of this very documentary coming out like a week after my birthday this year. So look forward to my September pick, which will also be The Eyes of Tammy Faye. And, if you're a longtime listener, you know that we've explored Jim Baker before, who was Tammy Faye's first husband. And I just felt like it's Pride Month. I want to pick something gay. I already picked Saved. So let me pick a documentary about a woman who is so clearly inspired by drag queens, a gay icon, and this documentary is narrated by RuPaul.
That fact was... I watched the trailer first, and I was like, why do I recognize this sweet, soothing voice?
Just FYI, though, for all the listeners, we're anti-fracking here, so that's only for the gays. I'm getting these looks of blank, you're welcome, gays.
Yeah, and RuPaul, you're welcome to come on the show anytime, except if you want to talk about fracking, in which case you're not invited. But yeah, I mean, this is a documentary that, it came out in the year 2000, so 6 years or 7 years before she passed from colon cancer, but it really covered a lot of interesting parts of Tammy Faye's life, and revealed some interesting stuff. Like, I don't know that my opinion of Tammy Faye is very much changed after watching this doc, but I was certainly like a little bit more impressed with her, just like based on her accomplishments. And like, it does tell her side of the story, which, in my opinion, I mean, not to skip to the end, but it does kind of just portray her as like a genuinely kind person that was a little bit too naive to be dealing with the people she was dealing with.
Yeah, I feel like the story of Tammy Faye is the story about how awful men in the like Christian world are, but also just in general, right? Like she's surrounded by these con men who take advantage of someone who is actually a true believer. And if that's not a metaphor, I don't know what is.
I found a lot of parallels, and I'll bring this up later, to like other people that we've talked about, just about connection to the gay community. This might be skipping ahead a little bit, but I found a quote where she was talking about how like, very low points of her life when she looked about like who was there to help her out. It was the gay community. And for longtime listeners of this podcast, you might remember the God Warrior, who said the same thing after a moment of tragedy. Who was there to help you out? It's the LGBTQ community. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that, like, especially during this time period of the, like, I'm just hitting with, like, late 90s, early 2000s, the LGBTQ community, options for people to unproblematically love or very, very low. So you just love, so you attach to those people, and I still feel like that's a big part of the LGBTQ community today, of, the people that are kind get that love and kindness back.
Yeah, and I mean, there's a quote later on that is along the lines of, why do the gays love Tammy Faye? And it's because Tammy Faye loves the gays. And it's very, very clear. And even as recently as 2000, frankly, as recently as 2010, you could argue even today, that list, especially in the Christian community, could fit on an index card, right? Like, there's really just not that many people. I'm just like kind of inspired by this idea that you can be raised in such a conservative mindset, and then once it's humanized, you can change. And for Tammy Faye, it actually doesn't seem like it was a heavy lift. Like, it seemed to her she is a Christian because of her empathy, not even because it was her upbringing, right? Like, she seemed like way more interested in, incidentally, the gospel than most Christians, which I find just so fascinating and refreshing. And so let's talk a little about her beginnings in the Christian church. We have to talk about the wart.
Yeah, it's extremely chick track / Facebook. Your grandma posts something on Facebook propaganda, but it was fine. It was a cute story for her.
No, it was gross. I don't want anyone sticking their finger in a communion cup and then drinking it and a wart disappearing. So, listeners, Tammy Faye had a wart on her finger. She prayed to God, please get rid of this. And God said, stick your finger in the communion cup before you drink it. So Tammy Faye, being a loyal disciple, does so, pulls her finger out, drinks from the cup, her wart is gone. It is very clear where that wart went, in my opinion. Like,
I just can't wait for the article about the disease that then spread throughout that church due to that communion cup. Just, God, Catholics were right. That was Jesus' blood. It can do a lot.
Well, and I think it's important to note, Tammy Faye is the oldest, or was the oldest of 8 children, right? So, like, she was basically put into a mother role right away, because her parents were they were poor. They did not have, like, a luxurious upbringing where, they could have help. So the kids were the help.
And that's huge in evangelical culture. Mm-hmm. I would even argue, like, American culture. of
Mm-hmm.
first of all, the older sibling does help with raising, but there's something specifically about like an oldest daughter that you are just
Mm-hmm.
heaped on to a large amount of responsibility, and I think it's extra strong in the evangelical circle where your options are you find a good man and have children and reproduce for the word, make more warriors of God. So you can kind of see a lot of that like mothering instinct throughout her career. Even though when I think of her, I do think of a fun aunt energy is much more what I get. I know I'm coming off very, very positive. I do still have quite a few issues with Tammy Faye, and there are still some issues that like I think are blatant, but I'll come on to that much later in her life.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important to see everyone as a human,
Exactly.
not as a one-dimensional figure. I just think it's so clear that Tammy Faye is truly the victim in this story in a way that the perpetrators are her two husbands and the evangelical community, right? Like, we get Pat Robertson, we get Jerry Falwell, we even get a Ronald Reagan shout out. It's not one of my picks. I feel like I'm playing bingo with my own picks.
They have to meet certain criteria before we watch them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can we really quick address the fact that there are, whenever the documentary shifts over to a new segment, the segment title is announced by a pair of like Muppet dogs?
Yeah, because they got their start with puppets.
Mm-hmm.
So the puppets are very important to Tammy Faye and Jim Baker's origin story.
They were coming for
the
Kermit.
two, yeah, I mean, they met in Bible college. They had a whirlwind romance, fell in love, got married, and they wanted to spread a more joyful Christianity. They both, it's so interesting to watch those Baker videos in a more modern sense contrasted to the old ones, right? It's so clear what an influence Tammy Faye was on him. Because him in the past, it was like, yeah, we want to have fun. Religion is boring, but faith is fun. And that's so interesting to me because he shifts to a very dour place and a very like capitalistic con man place.
I think the most interesting thing, having watched Jim Baker after his downfall, right, that was my first introduction to him, is this guy who sells just the most horrible looking dehydrated food that I've ever seen in my life. And these like, yeah, just talking about end times, baby. And seeing that shift from what he was, which was like, good looking young guy in the, I want to say 60s, 70s, who like, they explained this in the doc, but like a lot of their material when they were doing their television show Head On was completely ad-libbed. Like, no script. They were just like, he was just reacting to whatever, wild stuff Tammy would make the puppets say. And like, you could see like he used to be a performer, somebody with like, I hesitate to use talent to describe him, but I mean, he was at least good enough to play off Tammy. They were able to make something out of it, which was truly, I hate to compliment Jim Baker, but he wasn't completely worthless at one point in his life.
They had chemistry, right? Like, you can tell that they had chemistry. And I mean, I would argue that she's the showman of the group, right? And he was at his best when playing off of her. And I think he knew that, honestly. I mean, there's a reason that she's the one that filed for divorce, not the other way around.
And
not to, like, spoil our own story, but
it does kind of explain why removing the talent now produces shows that are talking about why COVID's fake and at what month Trump will become president again. It shows that he was in it to make, very clearly, no one here is surprised that he was in it to make the biggest amount of money possible, and he was going to use whatever was around him. At that point, it was someone who could produce a show, give you like there was something there. Now it's just conspiracy theories, QAnon, and Facebook.
right. And I actually think it's really funny because in this documentary, Tammy Faye tips her hat at being a Democrat.
There's a trend with religious women who will mock their Republican husbands and be like, they always vote Republican, and kind of look at you and be like, you see what do you understand what I'm saying? And I don't, it fascinates me because it is a certain group of people, just specifically because I could not imagine marrying someone and then finding out that they voted for Trump and me just being like, oh, shucks. Like, what do you go? Oh, there they go.
Right, and it is reminiscent of Marguerite, right?
Yeah.
Like, Marguerite was, like, lambasting her husband for being a Trump supporter.
But, like, at least I can think of, like, 5 other people I went to church with where the wife of the family was way, way more moderate, even into, like, touching into, like, liberal territories, while their, like, husband would gladly call me, like, a slur. And so it's very interesting that, like, there is something to that trend.
Yeah, I mean, it's fascinating, right? So let's talk a little bit about their show. They had a puppet show, and that apparently caught the attention of Pat Robertson. And he wanted a Christian TV network, and so he partnered with the Bakers to make the 700 Club. And that was their Christian talk show. It was the first Christian talk show ever, and it was starring Jim.
I did have to look that up because at first I thought it was when people tried to join the Mile High Club but gave up way too early. We'll just fuck on top of this little hill.
Or during the ascent or descent, that feels like the wrong move.
You've got
that's a risky thing to do.
A small window.
I like the idea of people doing it on the when you're landing, because, like, when you're flying, like, okay, you got plenty of time, but if you're landing, like, you do not have a lot of time to get that done. That's
Listen, some people have anxiety while flying,
window.
and the takeoff and descent are the scariest parts. You do what you gotta do to relax. Privately.
God.
So their story with their network, their first network, ends in a way that you're going to find a pattern to. They were screwed over by people who were more powerful than them, the Crouches. And the Crouches don't want to participate in the documentary. This is another theme you will notice, is that Tammy Faye writes to them, Tammy Faye is a curious person, right? Like, she wants to understand people and their motives. She herself is not interested in the apology game. She doesn't need you to apologize for her. She says over and over again with many people who have wronged her, that's not mine. That's not mine, that's God's. God will decide where you go. That's who you need to make it right with. Like, whatever. You can say sorry to me or not. So it's fascinating to me that so many people don't want to meet with her. And I think it's just because how would you look that woman in the eye and be like, I did nothing wrong to you? Like, I see you're hurt, which she's such an empath in the way that not only does she take on others' emotions, her emotions are they're contagious. Like, when she feels something, it just, like, radiates out of her. So I imagine that a lot of them are kind of afraid.
I'm so sorry. I did not realize this. The Christian Broadcast Network still exists, but under a new name. Do you guys just take a guess what channel this still exists as?
Is it not focused on the family?
It's ABC Family.
Mm-hmm. You didn't know that?
I didn't.
What the fuck?
Yeah.
And it's all it like rebranded and then like became like the Fox Family Channel and then was sold to Disney and became the like ABC Family Channel. Like, and now is called Freeform.
Yeah, Disney secularized the Christian network.
It took the Christ out of the Christian network, and now it's just the network.
Now it's just Freeform, whatever the fuck that means.
Sorry, Michael, that just
Disney.
was wild.
So then, Tammy and Jim decide, okay, we need to make our own network. And this is where you get like the fun family Christian, like gospel of fun, as it's called. It was interdenominational. And this was a version of Christianity that, frankly, I could see becoming like really popular if it ever went mainstream, right? Like, Tammy Faye was insistent on bringing AIDS patients on. And this is something that I think that today maybe isn't as shocking, but Tammy Faye bringing AIDS patients on that were openly gay was happening at a time when Ronald Reagan was president and wasn't addressing the fact that the AIDS crisis was happening.
This was at the point where there were people asking White House correspondents, and White House correspondents were, well, I don't think anyone in this room has AIDS, do they? Does anyone in this room have AIDS? Didn't think so we don't need to worry about it. And it's just, yeah. Ronald Reagan, great president. Anyone want to go piss on his grave with me?
I shouldn't say what I would do to his grave.
It's Pride Month, we're fine.
But, like, it's wild to me, right? Like, it's wild that this evangelical leader is more progressive than the former governor of California on the issue of AIDS. And even on the issue of gay people, right? Like, Tammy Faye really, like, they used a lot of her quotes that I quoted back in our Baker episode. I don't need to re-quote them. But basically, anytime you put a camera in front of Tammy and ask her about gay people, she would be like, they're people. I want to treat them like people. Why is this radical? Like, anyway, I just think it's really impactful that Tammy Faye was such an ally at a time where, you know, even among secular people, there weren't really allies. You know, their show is very controversial. We have to talk about the penile implants.
Yeah, boy, we do.
She does. There is a spot where she is just like speaking with somebody who, I guess, like sells or produces these penile implants, which basically just look like, you know, those like those icicles that, like, icicle pops that you eat in the summer, and like when it melts, like you drink all the juice. It looks sort of like the wrapper for that.
I did not think that's where you were gonna take us.
You could have given me 8 years and $4 million, and I never would have finished that sentence.
Yeah. Anyway, they look sort of like if you blew into that. They just
You
sort of
blow into
inflate.
that, you drink the juice.
They're very
Aaron
weird
is
looking.
walking into this.
Aaron's got that.
I'm an ally. Well, I'm gonna
This is your
leave.
own fault, Aaron.
What? Listeners, the Green Brothers are ganging up on me again. I need your support.
My initial thought was it looks like one of those party things that like roll up and then you blow it and they go like blurng.
I mean, it's literally just a fucking balloon.
That's true.
Yeah. You blow it
Yeah,
and it gets
it's
bigger.
weird.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, Tammy Faye had this on a Christian network, and she also had 40 albums, which I found incredibly impressive.
I've got one of them.
40.
And if you want to start that collection, please.
I mean, do you know how long it takes to record 40 albums?
At Lord's pace, about 19,000 years.
Yeah, you put out one album every 5 years. So they actually started a 24-hour broadcasting, which, again, like, now we just don't think anything about, right? Like, that is our now operating standard. But at the time, that was kind of wild. They were one of, 4 satellite channels at the time?
Well, because there was so much more equipment required. Like, now a dude, like, went on Twitch for a month straight, but he needed, like, a camera and no plans. Like, at that point, like, there was so much involved in order to make that happen.
Yeah, just watching this whole documentary did just fill me with an overwhelming sense of gratitude that I grew up in an age where the internet existed.
This right here couldn't have happened.
No.
The Bible Boys would not have happened. We would have written mock chick tracks to try to sneak them in to see if anyone noticed.
This would be a radio show.
Oh.
Hi, welcome to the Bible Boys. We got your 98.5. We got all the rock at 5 and all of the roll at 4.
Oh my god. So yeah, like, the next step is obviously when you're one of 4 satellite networks in the world, the next logical step is to make a Christian Disneyland. So Roe Messner, who is later going to be Jim's best friend and Tammy's second husband, pairs up with Jim to make Heritage USA.
This is where, y'all, Christians, if you're a Christian, listen to this podcast. First of all, like, comment, and subscribe. Second of all, not everything has to be quote-unquote Christian. Like, you don't need a Christian set of cooking knives.
Well, interestingly,
you don't need...
Tammy Faye agrees with you.
Yeah!
Like, that's...
Just go to Disney!
That's the thing. Like, this is what's so wild to me, right? Like, Tammy Faye was just kind of along for the ride with these particular set of ideas. And, yeah, like, you also can see... So they had to do telethons to fundraise for Heritage USA because... Did you all know it was expensive to open a theme park?
I was not aware of this fact.
This part is where, I just earlier talked about how I was like, Jim Baker has something is going for him. This is where I was like, yes, but he has always been a huge piece of shit. So, the doc does a very good job of showing how these calls for funding for this theme park escalate, and they're like, oh no, they're gonna repossess our house and take all, we're gonna go bankrupt unless each of you sends, $5 and then $10, and then if each of our listeners just sent $1 a day, and then it builds and builds until we get this really just brutal advertisement for what Jim Baker charitably calls a rice patty baby for $100, which is a caricature of an Asian person with a stereotypical conical straw hat, and he's like, this would be great for you if you sent me $100 in the 1980s, which
$4
is
billion in today's
a lot of money.
You could buy a house with that amount of money back then.
I mean, it's so gross, and it's so naked in what it is, right? And when you watch the footage, you can tell that Tammy Faye is not present. And that is because that's when Tammy Faye is starting to use Ativan. And if any of our listeners don't know what Ativan is, it's a benzo. And those are notoriously addictive and hard to get off of, and were overprescribed, especially to women.
This is just real quick tangent before we leave our Bible theme park. I love theme parks in both learning about them and visiting them. Like, I love, Action Park, where, it was the theme park with no rules and, multiple people died there. Mm-hmm. And, Michael, I'm sure you remember that our parents told us all the time that there was almost a Disney park, mm-hmm. 10 miles away from mm-hmm. our house, where Disney almost got onto that. What if we made a history-themed battle park, right next to the Manassas battlefield? And I was Googling that to make sure it was real. There's a segment where it's got different parts, and they've got Victory Field, which takes place from 1930 to 1945, States Fair from 1930 to 1945, which is the same thing, Family Farm from 1930 to 1945, again the same year, Civil War Fort 1850 to 1870, that's not when the Civil War happened, mm-hmm. President Square 1750 to 1800, and my favorite, Native America 1600 to 1810.
It's actually the most American thing to build a theme park monumenting mm-hmm. your genocide, so I'm surprised this didn't happen.
It's also the most Disney thing because they would sanitize it, but also be disgustingly racist about it. I don't know how you do both things, but Disney always manages to do it.
And again, I don't want to get too deep into this because I could, but apparently it existed because a Disney exec went to Williamsburg and had a lot of fun.
Oh my god, if one Disney exec, singular, went to Heritage USA, they would have a Christian theme. They would have Christian Kingdom or something.
But it'd be Star Wars land where there'd be Roman soldiers that would fake crucify you. Aaron, you'd actually
I was gonna say, and at 3 p.m. every day, watch as the curtain of the temple is rent and Jesus gets crucified. Bring your kids.
Would you like your fish and loaves of bread?
4D resurrection
That's all we have
special.
here.
You can wash your own feet. But that's not what Heritage Park was. They were afraid to commit.
No, Heritage Park was literally just a theme park. Like, it was just like...
Cut this part out of the podcast. Whoever's editing this, cut this out. We're saving this. We're going to make $1 bajillion.
But I want to say, they made like a castle at Heritage Park, and it looks like a cult. Like, that's where they were going to make their last stand. You can take our money if you rip it from our cold, dead hands.
Oh my god.
Come and take it. Sorry, that was a big tangent.
I mean, here's the wild thing, though. Heritage USA was the third most popular park in the country.
It was only second to the 2 Disney parks. That's fucking crazy.
I'm telling you, literally one Disney exec. They were one Disney exec away.
We're so lucky that, like, Walt Disney's head was frozen. Like, otherwise, we could be in a lot of trouble right now, boys. He'd be all up in this.
And so Tammy was feeling very disconnected from this world, right? Like, she was not very involved with the theme park at all. She wishes she was, in retrospect. She is dealing with her, use and abuse of Ativan. She felt like everything had just kind of like grown past her. And it was during this time that Jim Baker sexually assaults Jessica Hahn. And we've talked a little bit about this. And yeah, he gets a loan from Roe Messner to pay her off because his original plan was to use Heritage USA funds to pay her off, which, like, that just, like, shows you the amount of critical thinking going on, and it's not at all.
Jim Baker's not a smart man. Mm-mm. He's not a good man. And
it's just... it's such a depraved, awful allegory, right? It's just like, yeah, I'm going to pay off this person I attacked using the money from my Christian theme park. Like, you can't get a worse look.
The Christian theme park based around, look how much fun it is to have faith. Like, there's something even more sickening about this is the positive, the fun Christianity. But that's how it always goes. It's the youth pastor that wears jeans and, like, has like a baseball cap and plays guitar. Like, that's the one you fucking look out for.
Yeah, he always has an 18-year-old girlfriend.
Yeah, always. Continuously, they never age.
Nope.
Much like Leonardo DiCaprio.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Once they figure out how calculus works, they're out.
Well, that's great, because I'm always in the market then. So...
It's, I guess, Michael's type.
So, we now learn that Tammy Faye actually does not yet know about any of this. But it was around this time that she overdosed on Ativan. And when she did, they were flying her to the hospital, and she tried to open the door of the private plane they were on. Because here's the thing, benzos make you hallucinate. So Tammy apparently had enough to kill a, like, much larger man. And Tammy Faye was a small woman. I think she was like 5'1", 5'2", if that. She was a very small woman. So she's lucky she survived that, honestly. And really is lucky that she did not have ongoing health issues from her Ativan use, seeing as it was that severe. And yeah, she went to Betty Ford for one night and quit cold turkey. And I have chills about the idea of, like, I spent one night at Betty Ford and then I quit Ativan cold turkey. Like, what? That is not usually how this story goes.
There is something in her mindset, I think, that, like, she just has different brain chemistry that she can just do that. She's like, oh, they explained it to me, and then I stopped being addicted to drugs. It's like, I think she's just, like, literally different somehow.
Yeah. Well, it's almost
Exactly.
like if there's something divine about it, right? Like, oh my God, maybe God does talk to Tammy Faye.
Tammy Faye sees like a bear in the woods and calls the ambulance for the bear. Like, Tammy Faye will fuck you up.
Have you all seen the video of the woman who literally shoves the bear to get her dog? That's Tammy Faye energy. Like, just shoves the bear, grabs her dog, and runs.
Tammy Faye don't fuck around.
No. So yeah, she quit cold turkey, and she replaces Ativan with Diet Coke. And she says it's fine. The president, Bill Clinton at the time, likes it, so she's in good company. And it's so funny to me, the idea that in the time of the, like, you know, religious right, where evangelicals were being heavily, heavily courted by the Republican Party, and there was a mass realignment and engagement of white evangelicals in this country to be radicalized in the Republican Party and to later be QAnon believers, that Tammy Faye Messner was like, Bill Clinton, that's my president. That's wild to me. Because he was like the saxophone playing, like, I'm not really religious. Like, that was the imagery at the time. So it's really interesting to me that that's where she shakes out there.
It's, again, another one of those...
Well,
I winked. I forgot what type of media we were producing. It's like one of those, I'm not, get it? I'm not, it's like when I talk to my, like, work friends, I'd be like, man, you know, we don't get paid enough. If only we could get, like, a united collective going on here, you know what I mean? Please don't fire me, store that I work at that I won't name.
I'm glad you don't name drop your store.
Yeah, because then they will fire me.
So, no surprise, Jerry Falwell preys on Jim and Tammy's vulnerable situation. Falwell was really desperate to get that sweet satellite money, so he called Jim Baker and said, there's a story about you that's bound to drop, and it is about Jessica Hahn, and I'm calling you to tell you because if you want some help, I'm here for you. And I'll help you weather this storm. We're Christians, like brothers in Christ. And Tammy Faye thinks this is an awful idea. She's like, hey, I don't think you should give up power to him. We'll get to her reaction to the Han thing in a minute, because I think it's very important in telling about her character. But I also think it's important to note that she advises Jim Baker against this. And he doesn't listen to her because what do women know about business? It's wild to me that Tammy Faye has always had the better business sense of the two of them. Like, she did not want them involved in Heritage USA, which was a money pit. And she also wanted to avoid this.
It's partially because Jim Baker has the plan to make money like a cartoon villain. Like, yes, I will make the theme park and make millions of dollars. Mwahaha! Like, he's an idiot. Like, he just thinks that, like, he's so dumb.
I find it very funny that Jim Baker's concept of logistics is the only thing that's improved, whereas originally he was very not uninterested in making sure that his park was sustainable, and now he sells 7-year batches of goods to people. It's just kind of a fun character evolution.
I feel like this story is wild because Tammy starts off good and ends up better. And Jim starts off, I would say, like, chaotic neutral and ends chaotic evil.
Yeah. That's very accurate.
Like, it's a weird evolution, right? Like, I don't know that you often see two people diverge in such a way who were already in different calibers of one another.
So does this Falwell stationary thing happen before or after the house thing? Because I want to talk about the house thing.
I think first we have to talk about Tammy's reaction to Jessica Hahn, right? And then I think it's
yeah, I mean, I don't have that.
And then Falwell?
Yes, okay.
I think so.
That sounds right.
I just watched this. I should really be, like, the authority here, and here I am going, maybe. So, Jim Baker's story to Tammy Faye is that he had a one-night stand. Tammy Faye does not react to this in the way that I think most people would. She writes Jessica Hahn and says, I want to meet with you and hear your side of the story. And like, I have chills right now. That is so telling of someone's character where, you know, this is her husband that she met in college. At this point, they've been together, what, 20 plus years? And she is saying, no, actually, I want to hear from the woman who says you raped her.
To me, that immediately tells me she did not believe a fucking thing he said. Like, that's the vibe I got, that she immediately went, you didn't, this is not correct, so that you are clearly lying. And the balls to do that is amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I think there is something about, like, they'd been together for 20 years, which means she knows that her husband's full of shit.
I do think that there was probably a piece of, like, I know he's kind of shitty, but that's some next level shitty that I could see why that she then went to, like, I need to go talk to the person. Because it's a big jump from being a shitty person and a shitty conservative and a shitty evangelical to straight up, like, abuser, assault,
assailant.
Thank you. Yeah, just evil.
Yeah. But the fact that she does that, I think, is very telling about her character. And I think it says a lot about who Tammy Faye is, that her jump is not, this person is lying, they're maligning my character, right? She will later say that about the financial stuff, but about Jessica Hahn, she never says an ill word about this woman. And I think that's very important in the story of Tammy Faye. So Aaron, do you want to talk about the house?
Yeah, I mean, there's this part, right, where they're about to lose the PTL network, right, that which is what Praise the Lord network, right? That's their TV network that they established, and like they're going through these hard financial times, and you know they realize, like, okay, we're gonna lose our house, we're probably gonna lose the network, and I was just astonished because, like, what happens is that they do one final broadcast, and that just floored me. Like, they like take the time to be like, okay, hey, so this is us leaving our house, and you know, we're not going to broadcast on this network anymore. Thank you so much for being with us over all these years. And they say goodbye to their audience, and Tammy, she sings a song, like, to close out their show, and like, I just think that's so interesting, and maybe it's indicative of the fact that they still had a little bit of power at the network to be able to pull that off. But like, I don't think that would have flown, you know, today. Maybe on like a Keeping Up with the Kardashians, but like, you know, if a network gets bought out, like, they don't let the last people be like, anybody, this is why we got fucked, we miss you all, this, you know, fuck the new people who are taking over, bye. And like, I just think that's such an interesting, like, the 80s and 90s are such a wild time for media compared to what we have now.
Some of it has to be the fact that Falwell was playing chess when Jim Baker in particular was playing checkers, right?
And
Jim Baker was barely playing tic-tac-toe.
And Jerry Falwell Jr. was watching his wife get fucked while he was in the closet.
We all know that story. We had a special on
There are
it.
3 different mental games.
So
tic-tac-toe, chess, and cuckoldry.
yeah, I mean, look, Falwell was trying to screw them over in the long game, right? And he does. He lies, says he was taking over for 6 weeks, accuses Jim Baker of not screwing over people for money. That was not the deal breaker. It was homosexuality. And like, that just is such a interesting juxtaposition between the two couples, right? Where like, Jim Baker was no and is no ally to the queer community. But Tammy Faye was, and she refused to let anyone around her not be. And she refused to let her Christian network be homophobic. And Falwell literally went, oh, because your wife brought gay people on, I'm going to accuse you of homosexuality. And it was like galaxy brain thinking, right? And I think that's just so telling of the evangelical movement, where it's like, who cares if you screwed over poor people, but gay sex?
Or assaulted a woman.
Yeah, I mean, this is where you see, like, that Jerry Falwell, OG Falwell, is just, like, such a god-awful human being. Like, the ways in which he attacks the the PTL network and Baker, and like it's very telling, of course. But like I think the most insidious part of this story that the documentary portrayed was that like he was like, okay, I'm here's what's gonna happen. We're gonna make sure you, Jim, and Tammy are taken care of. He sends this guy to Tammy, and he's like, okay, just Tammy, we're gonna give you, when the board makes its decision, we're gonna make sure you get all the benefits that you've been receiving. So just write down a list of your benefits that you're already receiving, and we'll make sure that that's what you get in your severance package. And Tammy, unfortunately isn't extremely weirded out by this, and she writes this down in her own stationery, and then Falwell goes before the board and on national television. He's like, "This is what Tammy Faye requested, as a severance package, and it's like it's very expensive, luxurious stuff. It's like a maid and a very expensive salary and benefits, but like it's what they were already getting. Like, I mean." But he makes it out to be like this is what they're asking, even though Jim Baker is a closet homosexual and he's running the network into the ground. Like it is almost Disney villain-esque, like in that it's just a misunderstanding that they use to gain financial and political power. It's so fucking gross, and I just oh god, having a son who's into cuckoldry could not have happened to a better man.
There's something about Falwell that genuinely makes me happy that like that's not the enemy we have to deal with currently. You know what I mean? Because he seemed a lot better at this shit. It's kind of like how you hate Mitch McConnell so fucking much, and it'd be better if he was worse at his job. You know what I mean? He's so good at fucking up the country, and I think that like
that's the thing. Yeah.
Like Falwell, very good at fucking up the country.
It's fine to have, we're always going to have our ideological and political enemies, but when they are competent, that's different. That's the problem.
It's like, I love making fun of Jim Baker, and Jim Baker is a much easier enemy to take down because he's so fucking bad at this.
Yeah. So bad at this. And, I think there's an interesting point here that I maybe half agree with, maybe even less than that. But a point that was made is all of these evangelicals and Christian networks were living like this. The Bakers were the example, right? And this is actually something that happens a lot in the court right now in this country, is you think fame and wealth is actually like a benefit. And don't get me wrong, it is. But sometimes it's, let's make an example of what would largely be considered a low-level crime, where you would pay a fee, declare bankruptcy, pay these people back. And instead, Jim Baker went to prison. I think he should have, right? Like, he screwed people over. I think he should have gone to prison for the rape, frankly. That's what I think. My hot take is, look, if Jim Baker gets on a telethon and you decide to call in and you want the racist doll, you're an adult. You make those decisions. But assaulting someone...
Me, and whoever edits this might have to edit it out. It gives me big OJ vibes, where it's like, you're in jail for that? Wait, not the other thing?
Not the murder?
Not the murder for the stealing of your memorabilia? But he's free and tweeting.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, is that oftentimes these cases, either the prosecution or, the judge themselves are like, no, this is a problem, right? And here's the thing, I agree with the judge, right? Like, no one should be profiting off of Christianity. Like, that was kind of Jesus's whole shtick, was no one should be profiting off of religion. So I'm with you. But also it means, like, if we're going to do this, it should probably done through policy or through some sort of organizational tools, not through throwing the book at someone for doing something that other people are also doing out in the open. It's not even like Pat Robertson is doing this in secret. It's not like Jerry Falwell was doing this in secret. This was all open and honest in ways that were just as wild as what the Bakers were doing. But they didn't go to prison.
I there's a part where Tammy, like you said, Tammy likes to talk to the people she feels that has wronged her. And I think that she confronts this person who broke the story about Jim Baker's fraud. And, like, she gets the reporter on and, like, she talks to him. And there's just this moment where she's like, why did you say these things about me? And, you said that there were millions missing. And, like, he seems to waffle. He's like, well, did I say that? But, like, I didn't get the sense that the reporter was lying. It seemed like all the things in his, Charlotte Observer report were true. And, like, it does make me wonder about Tammy, because, like, she does just genuinely seem very naive about the fact, because, like, even in the financial stuff, she was defending Jim about that. And she's such an interesting person, because I don't know why she is still at this juncture sticking up for her husband and asking this reporter, what's going on? Like, why did you say these things about me? And maybe it's because, like, she is just such a genuinely pure-hearted person that she's, like, astonished that somebody would, like, come for her family like this.
Yeah, and I wonder too how much of it is I came from nothing and this afforded my family this lifestyle, and then after it was lost, my daughter ran away, my son fell into troubles, my husband went to jail. Like, in a way, it must feel like a personal attack, right? And I think some people are wired, I think most people are actually wired in a way to get in a defensive crouch with that. And I almost wonder if Tammy Faye was like, I believed my husband with this thing, and an easier pill to swallow than my husband lied to me about our finances and covered up this dark thing that she's already dealing with, another completely separate thing that he lied to her about for years. I don't know that she could have taken that, so her head compartmentalized it. It just felt like someone who legitimately believed that this person did this thing to her, not uncovered the truth of something that happened. And even after that, she hugs him. She signs a copy of his book.
I mean, he's an asshole for bringing that book and being like, hey, can you sign this for me? Like, fuck off, dude. Read the room.
She signs it, you're forgiven. Like,
Tammy, she's wild.
Just like the purest heart.
It's a big dick move, by the way, though. Like, that's some real, like, I don't think she meant it this way, but I would read that and go, oh, she's better than me. Like,
I mean, it's an own,
oh my
for
god,
sure.
yeah. Like, you retire then.
Well, I mean, I guess you have already reported on the story of your life and had a book that sold pretty well. You probably do retire at that point.
Yeah.
So yeah, like, Tammy Faye forgives him, and so then she remarries. She divorces Jim, and remarries
She has a type.
Ro Messner.
She certainly has a type.
Old
The
frauds.
con men
Yeah.
love
Yeah.
Tammy Faye, and Tammy Faye, I think, largely sees it's interesting, right? Like, the micro of con men is so different than the macro. In the macro, you can see, like, why the fuck would you marry Ro Messner? It's very easy from our perspectives to be like, duh. But in the micro, you see a charismatic person who's telling you what you want to hear, who's promising you this life that you once had. I don't think it's that far of a leap that one could believe that and then go along with it. On the macro, it's very easy, right? Like, I would love to sit here and say never. I would never. But I do think, like, when you're in that situation, you can make some really dumb decisions that are from a place that maybe you can't even, like, figure out where it's coming from, but this place of, I have nothing to lose. What reputation did she have left? What finances did she have left? And of course...
Well, she was probably hoping, like to get the gym without the baker. You know what I mean? Like, she's looking to restore her life, and this dude's saying that he can do all of the things that Jim Baker did, minus the crime and assault and all of the bad things. No Baker buckets, just
financial
no
crimes
heritage.
with this one.
Yeah, just some good old white collar crime.
Yeah.
I mean, that I get it. I'd rather marry a fucking white collar criminal than a rapist.
Yeah, I mean,
so.
fair. I do think somehow
fair,
this is an
yeah.
upgrade.
Yeah, it is. It is.
When you start from the bottom of the barrel,
When you start at the bottom of that
Tammy,
$10 5-gallon Jim Baker bucket.
Gross.
I do.
Tammy, you deserved
So
so
much
much
better.
There is a very strange stereotype of the fast-talking, charismatic con man and his tiny blonde wife who just gives him trouble. Like, there's such a Looney Tunes cartoon setting that they've stuck with.
It's so funny, and it's so funny that they, like, exemplified this not once but twice.
Like, if they had New York accents, that's the only way it could be better.
Oh, and then then Messner goes to prison, and then she's like, now I actually have to do all this by myself. I've been doing it by myself anyway, but now it's like for real.
And I like that her first independent gig is a show with a gay co-host. And like,
Well, go to what works.
yeah, like,
And
Tammy Faye knows her audience.
well, she's been working with these boring ass straight cis het dudes, and she's like, give me nothing, sweetie, and that's all they've been doing. She needs someone with a little stage presence.
Yeah, and this is when they say, like, you know, gay people like Tammy because Tammy likes gay people. Their show did not last. Her co-host, which we see in the documentary, lost his partner to AIDS, and at the time he was just diagnosed. And she, like, goes to visit him, asks him how he's doing, and, you know, has her famous quote about God didn't make any junk. And that's just, like, I think that what's interesting is her co-host said, I don't know how it would jive with Tammy's beliefs, but I actually think Tammy tells us textually how it jives with her beliefs. It seems that she thinks that God made gay people, and that we should love people, and that's the end of that. Like, there's no, in her, you know, she has her naive side on this one hand, but on the other hand, there is something very pure about it, where it's, oh, it doesn't need to be any more complicated than this.
I do genuinely think you could sit down, if, like, when she was alive, you could sit down with her, and if you asked, like, who's going to heaven, she'd be like, I don't fucking know. Like, just be nice. Like, that's what I really liked about her, was just be nice to meet people. Like, just be kind.
Though it does seem that she thinks that Jerry Falwell went to hell.
She hates Jerry Falwell the amount I do.
Yeah.
And that's impressive.
And she, like, takes pains to not say it. She's like, look, Jerry doesn't owe me an apology. He owes God an apology. I hope he makes one. It's not up to me whether he goes to heaven or hell. It's up to God. And I've spent enough time in Baptist churches. I know what that means. That means, fuck you, Jerry Falwell. You're burning in hell for eternity.
It means suck my whole asshole. That is the...
I mean, she
called him Christian slurs.
I mean, what she said is, like, she was like, you know, I felt like I was carrying a dead person on my back. You know, I felt like I was carrying Jerry Falwell on my back for so long, and was it hurting Jerry Falwell that being on my back was hurting me? He's dead.
She literally laughs when she says he's dead.
Oh, it's beautiful.
It's so beautiful because this, like, kind, pure person also hated this awful person.
So we've been ignoring the very clear analogy in the room of who she reminds me of. And I don't know how we haven't gotten there, that this is a much more Christian Dolly Parton.
I mean,
and
yeah, that's obvious.
And all the way to Dolly Parton has a successful theme park, which me and Michael did go to. Mm-hmm. It was a rip-roaring good time. Maybe cut out some of the Civil War stuff.
Yeah, they've done that now.
Since. Okay, good, because even a little kid, I was like, I don't like rooting for the South.
Yeah.
They like a medieval times situation, except it was Civil War themed. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the red and the blue, yeah, or the blue and the gray.
Confederate flag, whole nine.
Mm.
Yeah. Has since changed to that. Little late there, Dolly, but you live...
Better late than never, I suppose.
But the entire time I was watching this, and when I inevitably listened to this with our fan, who wins it. You not only get the record, you get one day where I sit next to you listening to it while we both sit in silence. Yeah, but that's the vibe I got throughout this entire podcast.
I mean, even from
movie.
the makeup and like the looks as an armor, right? Like Tammy Faye goes on Roseanne's show and says that like she doesn't feel pretty without her makeup. She's gotten it tattooed on. There's something about like this public persona is her armor. And I think that to be a woman who came of age in the 60s and 70s and like got thrust into the spotlight, you know, your looks were always on the table. So it's almost better to be a caricature, right? And to be a cartoon. Dahlia said it a million times where she's like, you know, if I make the joke about my big boobs, I beat you to the punchline. And like, I can get there and it's more funny if I make it. And I do wonder how much of that is there. And then also, like, I think Tammy Faye's life experience has been really degrading to her self-esteem.
I mean, it's riddled in dramatic peaks and valleys. And that cannot be good. Because even the peaks are filled with drugs and lies and, you know, terrible husband after terrible husband.
Well,
and the lows are like financial ruin and
I mean, and you know, she's someone who like sometimes the peaks and valleys happen together. So near the end of this, she gets diagnosed with her first bout of cancer, which actually causes her to reconnect with her daughter who had run away. And she said, I would take getting cancer to connect to my daughter. And it's like just so telling of her perspective, her state of mind, and then also just how sad life had gotten for her by this point, right? Like, she had very few people in her corner, and reconnecting with her daughter had to be meaningful. This did come out before Tammy Faye died. She did end up dying of, I believe, colon cancer, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So she was only 65 years old. And yeah, like it's very interesting, right? Tammy Faye's a fascinating character. We get to see her do a photo shoot, which I thought was hilarious. With her telling the makeup artist that there wasn't much you could take off because her eyebrows are tatted on, the lip liner's tatted on. And she refused to take off the eyelashes.
I liked that segment because it really just showed how much of her personhood she was comfortable like displaying and choosing to be. Like during all these shots, she's like, "No, I don't like this coat. This isn't me. I'm not going to do it." And she just like knows exactly what she wants and how she wants to present herself. And I thought that was really nice. Just somebody who is so confident in who they are, even though, you know, we've talked about it. She does have a lot of insecurities, but she knows how she wants to be perceived.
I think this is a good time to add this. I did a little bit of research because it kind of because Michael was taking the lead, so I'm sure he's got some research about how like Ronald Reagan's like grand niece left behind, but it bums me out that we were left with the Ringo of the Bakers, and that we had Jim Baker here with his terrible, terrible life. But that's not the only Baker out there producing Christian media. Jay Baker, which is their kid. And I would like to read a quote from revolutionchurch.com, the church that he helped found. As Christians, we're sorry for being self-righteous, judgmental bastards.
Huh.
And Revolution, a church for people who have given up on church. This is a gay-affirming Christian organization. Jay focuses on pushing for inclusivity, asked about thoughts on Trump and the LGBT community, made sure to mention that though the attacks on the LGBT community were quite threatening, the issue on the border was much more striking, and that all Christians should be united in fighting against the impacts on the church. Says that his mother is his biggest influence and is part of the reason why he does what he does. He's written many books, such as the One Punk Under God, The Prodigal Son of Jim and Tammy Faye, Tammy Faye would be so proud. Also, I inevitably trust anyone named Jay. It has not let me down yet. But just, like, tatted up and lots of piercings. Looks like a DJ. Big, chunky glasses. But just, I don't know. It's good to see that someone was listening and someone got what her message was and decided to update it to a much more, like, modern setting.
That's so cool. I was not expecting it to go that route. I was ready for him to be a disciple of Jim Bakker, and I'm so happy that it seems like both of those children ended up with more Tammy Faye than Jim.
And I'm pretty sure that this started, this is from 94. Like, this has been around he's been doing this for a minute. And, like, she was alive while he was doing this. So, I just wanted to end on a little bit of a higher note. It does my only issues with Tammy Faye are that, like, she was kind of instrumental on building something that I think had a lot of negative aspects to Christianity. I don't think that was her intention. I don't think that, like, she even added to the negative. I think she, like, added a lot of positive. But, like, it's impossible to ignore the fact that, like, we still have to deal with the Falwells and Bakkers and a lot of, like, I don't think it's her fault that they exist, but I do think that you can't ignore that they are connected at least a little bit. But it's just good to see that there's, like, her type of Christianity still exists.
Yeah, and it's cool to see her impact.
I did like that they ended the doc with Tammy getting Messner out of prison and then being like, I'm gonna go now and fuck my husband. See ya.
What a delight that woman was. Just stole every scene she was in.
She seemed pretty cool.
Yeah, so that's all I've got about The Eyes of Tammy Faye.
I guess we should rate the doc then.
Yeah, I genuinely enjoyed it. I'm going to give it one anti-Jim Bakker bucket.
I'm going to give it the 11th Station of the Cross. Jesus is nailed to the cross because Tammy did die for the sins of her husband, and I'm sorry about that.
I thought you were going to say something else there, but...
Nope. I mean, I should have... darn it, I should have said she did nail that guy at the very end of the documentary, but...
I am going to give this documentary 4 out of 5 false eyelashes, because that's what Tammy Faye would have wanted.
Perfect. Josh, I think it's your pick next week. Is that true?
I thought we were back to you.
It can be. I do have a movie lined
go ahead.
up.
I don't have one off the top of my head, so I'll pick one for next week.
Oh, no.
So, y'all are aware of Kirk Cameron.
Oh, what are you doing to me?
Now, at some point, we are going to watch his Left Behind, he was in the first Left Behind movie. We tried to watch a Left Behind movie earlier, and it's very bad.
We've only had 2 failed episodes, y'all. And that one failed before we even started recording. I could not finish the movie.
I didn't finish the movie either.
Yeah, no. It was... Wow, okay. I did. It was the fucking worst movie I've ever seen in my life, but I did at least sit through it. But I don't blame you. Fireproof, however, is his 2008 movie about a man who is a firefighter and uses a 40-day experiment known as the Love Dare. I think he's also addicted to porn at some point. It's going to be really, really bad. So I'm looking forward to this.
I've also seen this movie.
Oh, good! Oh, good. I'm glad you've both already seen it. I'm the only one who
I know
hasn't,
facts
so
about this movie.
Fun fact, my parents won free tickets to see this movie when it came out in 2008.
It's 2 hours long!
Oh, fuck off! You're not going to talk about long movies.
You did watch Silence with me, but you also said you enjoyed it.
It was a good movie. Alright, well, we're not arguing about the length of our terrible picks we inflict upon each other. Where can people find us on the internet?
I am at Green History on Twitter.
I'm at Michael's Diamonds on Twitter.
I'm at AaronSXL on Twitter. You can listen to the other podcast I do at Mortified Pod. This week, me and Layla are going to be watching the cutscenes from Kingdom Hearts 2, which are a lot. There's a lot of them, but Kingdom Hearts 2 is the best in the franchise, so I'm very excited to talk with her about it.
Make sure you watch the right one, otherwise you will see Goofy's nipples.
Listen, that's just a given in every Kingdom Hearts game. God. While Josh makes me cry about thinking about how Goofy lactates.
I'm a mammal.
Just remember that.
I got
Just remember
boobs.
It is okay to cry, because even Jesus wept.
Y'all about to get fucked?